Evening. This is Tuesday, March 25th, 6:30 p.m. This is the Chelmsford Conservation Commission calling this meeting to order. I'm the chair. My name's Carl Bischoff. We will be following the published and posted agenda. The meeting is both in person and through Zoom. If you're not in the room, you don't have the Zoom link. You wouldn't have the Zoom link. Never mind. I was going to say the Zoom link's on the agenda. It's not on the agenda anymore. We've had some Zoom bomb issues in town, so you have to contact David ahead of time to get your Zoom link. The meeting is being broadcast and recorded by Chelmsford Telemedia and will be available on their website and on YouTube. And we do clearly have a quorum here, so we're ready to go. The beginning of the meeting here, we're going to start out with a presentation from sponsored by the Chelmsford DPW, but this is from Kleinfelder and Company. This is on the Chelmsford watershed analysis, 3 different areas. And I think we can just start right now. Yeah, go right ahead. And we have Courtney. Yep. You need to kind of stay close, although if you come over here and point, there is a microphone you can up there in the ceiling. So, but for the most part, stay there.
Not here.
Oh, no, that one works.
This
that
one works too?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, great. And I just want to make sure that my colleague is on. Seth, can you hear us?
Yep, I can.
Awesome, okay. All right, so obviously I'm here in person. I'm Courtney Eaton. I'm a project manager, water resources engineer with Kleinfelder. And joining me on Zoom is Seth Bryant, who is also a water resources engineer. We've been leading this effort for about the past year. We started working on this back in February of 2024. And we're, at this point, really substantially complete with the study and coming before you to present the results, kind of where we're at. Just wanted to check. I know we have 30 minutes on the agenda. Is there any wiggle room in that? If we go a little bit over, is that okay? Or are you
I think if we go
knocking me over?
A couple minutes
Knocking me
over,
out?
we're fine. Yeah.
Okay, all right. We'll try to be quick then. All right. If you want to go to the next slide, just a quick agenda. So we'll just give a really quick review of the project background, and then we'll talk about the 3 areas. We'll start out first with the flood model and the risk results, or the risk review for each of the 3 areas, and then we'll shift into the mitigation alternatives and some recommendations and next steps. So you can actually hit 2 slides down if you want. All right, just briefly, the overarching project goals. So we were studying 3 sub-watersheds within the town, Evergreen Street area, the Black Brook area, and Deep Brook. And within those watersheds, we actually had some even smaller sub-watersheds that we were focused on. We created a hydrologic and hydraulic model for each of these to simulate what happens when big storm events occur, and as a way to identify some of the sources of flooding in these different areas and some proposed solutions. Just quickly, the hydraulic part of the model focuses on the buried infrastructure, and the hydrologic part of the model focuses on the surface flooding. So that's how the 2 come together to help us to understand what might be happening. So if you want to go to the next slide, Seth's going to talk just briefly about some of the inputs to the model and some of the field work that we did.
Thanks, Courtney. So as part of the modeling process, we wanted to look at both the risk that currently exists in each of the 3 watersheds, as well as the projected risk under climate change conditions. We know that extreme events are becoming more likely, so we wanted to make sure that was well represented as we assessed the flood risk in each area. So we have here just an example of the storms that we looked at as part of the study. So all of these bars represent the total rainfall that we looked at over a 24-hour period. So you can see it ranges from, on the smaller end, about 3 inches, all the way up to almost 10 inches, which is pretty extreme. For the criteria, when we looked at mitigation alternatives, we generally focused on what we call the 10-year 2070 storm, which is a 10% probability annual occurrence that we expect to see under climate change conditions in 2070. Some of the infrastructure owned by DOT specifically, we looked at a slightly higher design storm to match their required criteria. And then for all of these, we kind of looked at a worst case scenario, which is a 1% probability storm under both present day and future conditions. Next slide. So to create the model, we did do quite a bit of field work to ground truth the computer model that we put together. So we were out in all three watersheds collecting information for structures like catch basins and manholes to make sure that it matched what we were representing in our model. And then we did have a pretty robust field program. As you can see in both of these pictures, we put sensors out to monitor flow, and we use that to ground truth what we were projecting. So this graph you see here is showing in blue what we measured, and then orange is the output of our simulated computer model, both of them showing flow rate for one storm event. And for each watershed, we checked multiple different storm events to ensure that what we were simulating was actually representing what was happening out in the field. Next slide. You can go 2 forward. So we'll get into the results of the flood risk assessment. For all of these, we'll be showing the 2070 10-year storm. So again, 10% probability under climate change. But we did check that full range of storms for all of them. So in all of these maps, you'll see yellow lines, which represent pipes, so the underground buried infrastructure. The red dots are catch basins and manholes, and then the blue represents the flood risk that we're modeling, with the darker blue being the deeper flooding, the bluest areas being over 2 feet of flooding, and then the shallower flooding being the lighter blue. So in the Evergreen Street area, you can see everything kind of flows from left to right in this picture through the Market Basket parking lot and eventually out into a wetland area, where it then passes through a culvert under Route 3, which is owned by the state. So that's kind of the end point of the area we were looking at. And really most of the flood risk that impacted properties here was right along Evergreen and Wildwood Street. You can go to the next slide. So key takeaways from this, I think I described most of them, but one of the major ones was that downstream culvert really has significant impacts on how much flood risk there is. We know that historically maintenance there has been an issue. It's become clogged and been a restriction. And we looked at how clogging downstream can affect flooding upstream. And I won't go into too much detail, but we have the full results here. And essentially what we're showing is that if you compare when that downstream culvert is clear to when it's clogged with debris, the amount of flooding that occurs under the design storms we looked at over doubles. So really that downstream restriction, which is flowing into Lowell and owned by the state and really outside of the control of the town, is the biggest factor in flood risk in the neighborhood. Some of the upstream infrastructure the pipes were slightly undersized, but that didn't play nearly as much as a role. Next slide. So moving along to the Blackbrook watershed, specifically the area around Graniteville and Old Westford Street. In this area, the flood risk was really concentrated around a wetland that exists between those two roads. Is kind of that dark blue area in the middle that's been circled. This wetland drains through a culvert under Davis Road and then eventually out through a culvert under Graniteville Road. And we found a couple of things here. You can see everything here again is flowing left to right down to Blackbrook. And that culvert under Graniteville Road highlighted in the upper right side of the screen, that showed an undersized inlet. So it's creating a pinch point, which caused flooding upstream. So you can see water is kind of spilling over Graniteville Road there rather than passing through the culvert. And then further upstream in the wetland itself, the topography of the area is it's kind of like a bowl with a lot of drainage area flowing directly into that wetland. And that paired with high groundwater and kind of existing wet conditions causes really flashy or like quick increases in water level within that wetland itself. And that's really where we saw the most risk, was to properties bordering that wetland. Next slide. So just kind of bulleted out those same takeaways, kind of what I covered already, but there's a picture here of that inlet, which you can see everything's flowing into a channel, and then trying to get into that 30-inch pipe right there. And that's one of the pinch points that's causing flooding. Okay, next slide. And then our last area is Deep Brook. Our focus here was particularly around the Dunshire Drive neighborhood, where we saw modeled a significant amount of flooding. So again, here everything is flowing left to right, kind of starting in Swains Ponds and then following Deep Brook down until it outlets out into the Merrimack River. So throughout this area, it passes through a number of culverts, two under Dunshire Drive, one under Tingsboro Road, another under Butterfield, and then a couple more under the railroad. So there's a lot of points here where it can be kind of caught up if there's any restrictions. And the area is also relatively flat. And because of that, we see a lot of ponding during the largest events, kind of both in the middle of Dunshire Drive and the surrounding wetland areas around it. Next slide. So our key takeaways on this one, the biggest hydraulic restriction was the Tingsboro Road culvert, which we have a picture of here. You can see on the right, that's the inlet. It's pretty undersized compared to the stream coming in, and also takes a sharp bend, which isn't ideal hydraulically. And that presents flood risk, both for Tingsboro Road itself, but then also kind of backing up into the Dunshire Drive neighborhood. That paired with the flat topography and a bunch of water just flowing down from Swains Pond, it kind of gets stuck there, and that's what's contributing to the flood risk. And because of that, the highest risk areas that we identified where properties were actually being impacted was between Tingsboro Road and Swains Pond. Next slide. I think I'm going to turn it back over to Courtney to talk about our mitigation options.
All right, so as we mentioned, we looked at, can you still hear me? It doesn't sound like it's on, but I'm going to trust that it is. So we looked at a number of mitigation alternatives for the 3 different subwatersheds, and we just summarize some of the different factors that we considered. So we looked at both, economic considerations or the construction costs, including some of the items listed there, as well as the overall project cost, which would include design, engineering services, and permitting. And then we also took into account some non-economic considerations, thinking about, the flood benefit or impact after the mitigation alternative would be implemented, constructability, permitting challenges, O&M considerations, and community acceptance of the different alternatives. So it was a bit of a rating that we came up with for each of the different alternatives being considered. So we'll kind of follow the same pattern. We're going to focus on Evergreen first. If you want to go to the next slide, the Evergreen Street area. So the potential solutions that we were looking at here to really alleviate the residential flooding in that Evergreen Wildwood area, we looked at the potential of taking basically disconnecting the upstream storm water infrastructure from the market basket infrastructure, and putting a new outfall in the wetland there at the end of Evergreen Street, which would just drain the neighborhood drainage, and that helps with the maintenance issue at the downstream end of the MassDOT culvert. The second alternative, we looked at subsurface storage in the Market Basket parking lot, which would take all of the flow across the subwatershed. And then the third alternative was the potential of daylighting a vegetated swale in that wooded area between Evergreen Street and Market Basket. So those were the three alternatives that we looked at. If you want to go to the next slide, we evaluated the flood reduction volume that we might see. And Seth, if you want to say a few words about that.
Sure. So all three of these were fairly effective. We have here the baseline existing conditions and then reductions per alternative. And all of them reduce flooding by over 80%. And when you look at the average flooding in areas that were flooding in the baseline conditions, you see a drop from over 2 feet to all of them are down to several inches. So really significant improvements. There were kind of key benefits outside of the flood benefits for each of these. So as Courtney mentioned, by disconnecting that upstream portion and rerouting it through a new drain line, it would avoid relying on the DOT culvert to be maintained. It would completely disconnect it from that problem. So that was one key benefit. The only potential issue there from a permitting standpoint is we'd be adding a new MS4 outfall. But really, we would not be adding any additional catchment areas. It would just be redirecting where that flow goes, having it enter the wetland slightly upstream, but all in all, the same amount of flow arriving at that wetland. So that's the only potential downside we saw. For the other two, both of them kind of had a potential issue of the location where there is potential for storage was on property owned by Market Basket. So there needs to be some coordination there and coordination around O&M, specifically around the underground storage in the parking lot. But they each had kind of their own benefits too. The underground storage had the highest flood reduction, and then the vegetated swale would add in a green solution for the town.
If you want to go to the next slide, we can look at kind of what it looks like on an overall evaluation basis. So combining the non-economic considerations with the cost estimates that we put together, really alternative one ended up being I would say most cost effective. So, we looked at it on a normalized dollar per volume of flood reduction. And you can see the numbers there between, $86 per cubic foot reduced to $226. So, based on that, the alternative one really became the preferred alternative for this Evergreen Street area. If you want to hit the down button, I think it will highlight alternative one as our preferred alternative. Cool. If you go to the next slide, then this just shows you the top map is the existing condition under our 2070 10-year storm. We saw that earlier. And then the bottom map shows you the predicted or modeled condition with the proposed infrastructure. So a new installation of a new 24-inch stormwater drain that conveys the drainage from that Wildwood Evergreen Street area out along Evergreen Street to the wetland in a new location. So we can move on from there. So that kind of wraps up Evergreen Street. We can move to Blackbrook. I know we're going through these fast, but hopefully we'll have enough time for questions once we're done. So for the Blackbrook watershed, really what we were we were looking to do is to consider alternatives that would help reduce that wetland area flooding that we mentioned earlier. So the first alternative we looked at was culvert upsizing, and I just want to make a point that Seth mentioned this a couple of times. The culvert underneath Granite Road, which is sort of in the I guess upper right corner there, we looked at replacement and upsizing of that culvert for all of these alternatives. We really found that was going to be necessary regardless of what we were doing upstream of that. So that's included in all of the alternatives. Alternative 1 also includes an upsizing of the Davis Road culvert, and then some regrading and dredging of the channel between the two to help with the slope there. Alternative 2 and 3 are redirecting flow out of the wetland and into buried infrastructure that would be installed either along the Graniteville Road or Pilgrim Road to Graniteville, and then the alternative 3 is Old Westford Road. And then we looked at some combination alternatives as well. So if you want to go to the next slide. All right, and Seth, do you want to talk a little bit more about the flow reduction we saw here?
Sure. So for this watershed in particular, because this wetland area is designated as a wetland by DEP, we wanted to look at what impact we'd have to the wetland itself by redirecting flow. So just here, real quick, we looked at, for each of the alternatives that did draw flow that usually would go through the wetland instead into buried infrastructure, what proportion of flow is being pulled away. So on the first column, you can see the peak flow coming from each of the areas that were redirected. And then we have a percent of total. So alternative 2, Pilgrim Road, that only represents about 8% of the total flow going through the wetland for the 10-year design storm. For alternative 3, it's a little bit higher. Between the two areas that would be captured in the new Old Westford piped infrastructure, that represents about 60% of the flow, so more substantial, but also more likely to have a flood reduction impact. But in both cases, still a significant amount of flow is allowed to go through the wetland and ensuring that it remains a wetland. And just as a note, this is, while it's marked as a wetland, it is not designated as a high priority habitat location. Next slide. So it's quite a bit going on in this one, but I'll just show some highlights. It's the same type of non-economic analysis as we looked at before. When we're looking at the flood reduction for these, we found that really the only effective ones to address that flooding for properties along the wetland were those last 3 flow redirection ones. Upsizing the culvert alone, because of limitations we had without being able to work in the wetland itself, we maxed out at only a 10% reduction in flow, which really didn't change things too much. But for alternatives 3, 4, and 5, which all include parts of buried infrastructure on Old Westford Street and pulling flow out that way, those saw significantly higher reductions in flow, ranging from 69 to 82%. So just real quickly, some potential for the key benefits for these, for the Old Westford ones in particular, we'd be upgrading some existing infrastructure that kind of needs it already. And other than that, the benefits here are really around the flood risk being reduced. The potential issues here are mostly around permitting because it's a wetland. So for alternative 1, replacing that culvert, there'd be work happening near the wetland to adjust inverts and do some dredging. So that could be difficult just because of the wetland designation. And then for the remainder of them, where we're redirecting, as I mentioned before, just making sure that we're not redirecting too much flow and that it maintains its wetland status. Next slide.
Yeah, so again, putting this together with the cost considerations, in this case, alternative 3 really showed to be the most cost-effective, if you will, in dollars per volume of flood reduced, or the flood volume reduction. Certainly, you'll get a little bit more if you're able to combine redirection alternatives with alternative 4 and 5, but it's nominally, it's a nominal increase in flood reduction with a fairly good size capital expenditure. So, in this case, we kind of landed on alternative 3 as the preferred alternative within this watershed. All right. We can move past to Deep Brook so that we can get to, I'm sure, questions here shortly. I apologize, I forgot. So this is sort of the before and projected before and after. So the top map represents the existing conditions that we saw before. Remember, the darker blue is the deeper flood areas. And then the bottom map represents that preferred alternative, which was alternative 3. So we're redirecting only the flow on Old Graniteville, Old Westford. I apologize. And so you can see that there is still blue showing up in the wetland area, but it's a much lighter color, indicating a much shallower flooding that's occurring under this, again, under 2070 10-year conditions. All right. With that, we'll push forward to Deep Brook. So in this case, if you recall, the flood risk, there were kind of 2 areas. One, as you probably well know, the Dunshire neighborhood, as well as the wetland area between Dunshire and Tingsboro Road there. It's kind of the two main areas of concern related to flood risk now and in the future. We looked at 3 different alternatives in this case. The first one involved culvert upsizing. The first culvert that needs upsizing in this area is the one, the MassDOT culvert under Tingsboro Road. But once we do that, it then allows flow that is currently being backed up on the backside of Tingsboro Road. It allows that to come through and then impact the Butterfield culvert crossing, or it would under future conditions. So if we were to upsize Tingsboro Road only, you'd want to look at doing Butterfield Road as well. It's a smaller culvert, but it would protect that roadway and allow more of the flow to get into the downstream wetland and then out to the Merrimack. The second alternative in this case is different than what we've been talking about so far, in that it focuses on Swains Pond. There's a fair bit of storage capacity in that upstream pond for this area. So we considered what would happen if you put we call it active control on that pond, to be able to draw down the pond. In this case, we modeled about a foot of drawdown ahead of a storm event. Then you could use that storage to capture some of the flow that's coming in upstream, even from the neighboring community, and hold it until you can then kind of release it at a more timed manner. So we looked at that one independently, and then we looked at both the culvert upsizing and the active control on Swains Pond together. And in this case, if you're able to do both of those together, you actually would avoid the need to do the improvement on Butterfield Road. So those are the three different alternatives we compared in this case, or in this subwatershed area. If you want to move to the next slide, so we can go through the non-economic considerations. Seth, if you want to.
Yep. So when we looked at upsizing the culvert by itself, alternative one, there was a decrease about 20% in flooding, really localized around that culvert, which was important, but not really addressing the entire watershed flooding. So that's obviously a benefit for protecting that roadway itself. But the potential challenges we identified were that this would rely on coordination with DOT. There's a lot of utilities in the area that could make it a complicated design. And then, as Courtney mentioned, doing this by itself would necessitate upsizing the Butterfield Street culvert directly downstream, because now it would be letting through more flow. So alternative two, just controlling storage in Swains Pond upstream, because there's really a significant amount of volume there to work with and hold back during the peak of storms. This saw a really significant reduction in flooding, over 60%. The benefit here is it would just be a retrofit of the existing outlet structure to that pond, which is a small weir wall. So all in all, should be a relatively simple construction process. Potential issues is permitting around allowing the pond to draw down, but an important note here is that any drawdown would be temporary and not a permanent change to the pond. It would just be directly preceding anticipated storm events. Then lastly, alternative three, as expected, because it's the combination, saw the highest, almost 90% reduction in flood volume, which is great. And because we're holding back water, that combination reduces the need to also replace the downstream Butterfield Street culvert. So has all of the benefits and potential downsides otherwise of the two before. And next slide.
So with this one, we represented the cost just a little bit differently. Because that Tingsboro Road culvert is owned by MassDOT, we made an assumption at this point of what the anticipated cost would be to Chelmsford. That's the second line of alternative one and alternative three. And then the full cost is on the top. That obviously still have to be, worked through with MassDOT. And then, the tricky part about replacing a MassDOT culvert is the timing and being, that may be largely out of the town's control. So, looking at the dollar per cubic foot of flood reduction in this case, that combined alternative of alternative three is actually, it shows to be the lowest cost per cubic foot, slightly lower than alternative two alone. But if you're able to, do both, you could see a potential flood reduction increase of, from 60 to almost 90% potential. Obviously, these are all based on, predicted values, but this gives you, a good estimate of what the potential might be. So with that, we suggested that alternative three was a preferred alternative here. If you want to go to the next slide, we can just see the before, the existing versus the modeled flood benefit with the improvement in place. Doesn't want to go forward. There we go. So you can see on the top, the existing conditions under that 2070 10-year storm. And then the map on the bottom shows the proposed infrastructure. So you're replacing that Tingsboro Road culvert with a larger box culvert. And then, adding in the ability at Swains Pond to control the level there a little bit more actively than what is happening currently. And I think, I mean, the important thing to note here, Seth mentioned that the topography is pretty flat in this area. So we're not able to, or we're not showing, complete elimination of flood conditions, but I think dramatically improved, particularly in that Dunshire neighborhood as well as that wetland between Dunshire and Tingsboro Road. Really, I think it keeps it to the channels that already exist. All right, with that, I think we've got one slide left. Oh, we're a little bit over. So some recommendations from this study, some things to consider. We kind of took an approach of within the near term and, then thinking longer term. So some things to get started with in the Evergreen Street area. A next step might be to start the permitting process, to consider that new MS4 outfall and the flow redirection for Deep Brook. Consider replacing that, maybe a two-phased project. Consider replacing the Graniteville Road culvert, while you figure out funding for the larger redirection and improvement project there. And for Deep Brook, again, starting the permitting process to consider the active control at Swains Pond, while also starting to talk to MassDOT about what their potential improvement timeline might be for Tingsboro Road if you haven't, if that hasn't already started. I know it can take a while. And then, of course, these are not inexpensive improvements. So, looking at different funding possibilities. In the report that we provided to DPW, we did provide some options for potential funding mechanisms that you might be able to consider outside of, just the town funding it directly. So I think that's all we have. And I know we're a little bit over.
Thank you very much. Is Courtney Thompson on? No. She didn't, okay. Maybe Tony or Christine could answer a question. I'm curious, what's our next step in town? What's this process look like?
Well, so it's similar to how it's outlined here with the within 2 years and then long term. So with the report, it's really trying to look at what funding options we have, what funding we want to move going forward. A lot of these costs are greater than $500,000. And so it's not like we have anything in the funds right now to move forward these projects. We have already worked or reached out to the state rep for that Tingsboro. They were waiting for this report. It does show what we thought it was going to show all along, that that stone culvert is undersized. So we're going to be passing that information forward so that hopefully the state rep can help us with Mass DOT to get any movement on that project. But as far as the outlining on NOIs and moving forward with permitting, that's something that DPW we're going to take a look at in the next 6 months, give or take, and we'll be reaching out to David for what we'll be wanting to do just moving forward with those.
Okay.
But as far as like timelines or projects, we don't have any of that right now.
Understood. Okay, so thank you very much, Tony. I'm open to a couple of quick questions here. We really are a little bit over our time, and we have a lot on our agenda in the regular meeting. At a high level, if anyone has any kind of quick questions here from the commission, and we can open up very briefly to the public if there's any comments.
I just want to say, that's a great presentation. There's a lot of information there that we've been looking for a long time. I think you did a great job, so that's...
We've had a lot of applicants in those areas.
Right, right.
And more coming up soon.
Peter?
Hi, just quickly, thank you for answering one question a lot of applicants don't. Our regs require or call for an alternatives analysis, which you certainly have done all the engineering. But I'd suggest you also think about our regs that say your NOI submittal, besides alternative analysis, is supposed to identify the environmental impacts. And that's what's missing from the presentation, because after all, that's our job.
Okay.
At the end of the day. So give that a little bit of thought.
Sure.
And then just a final comment, and I don't know how this affects your project. I know you guys are deep at DPW and with you guys into this planning. But our town bylaws do talk about green infrastructure. So, for example, the Market Basket project, I understand your preferred alternative and why,
Right.
but our town bylaws talk about favoring, if possible, green infrastructure. So, as just an example, my thinking is, okay, if you want to change the outfalls at, Evergreen, what is the environmental impact? Because maybe it doesn't matter, right?
Okay.
I mean, maybe there is no benefit in looking at the green option. You don't want to do it just because you can tick off a box. I mean, maybe there is no environmental impact
Right.
to
right.
that wetland. So that's sort of my suggestion
Okay.
to keep permitting moving forward is, and I don't know how we want to do that, Carl, because that's kind of a big nut I actually threw out there.
Right, right.
Because it would change, where you're going on the permitting.
Right.
I mean, could.
Could.
So
Could.
I
Yeah.
don't want to belabor the point, but there's a
Okay.
couple of those comments that I
Okay,
could offer later.
Okay.
thanks. Anyone else? Okay, go ahead, John.
I think they should move Deep Brook to number one. Okay? And I think on the other two, you better think of where you're putting that water on other people. You're talking about shipping it under Route 3 to Lowell. Okay, you ship it to Lowell, what's gonna happen when you ship your water to Lowell? Same with Black Brook. You gotta think of where this water's gonna end up. When you oversize the pipes and everything starts flowing, it's gonna go somewhere. And it's gonna go to somebody else's land. So I think that's gotta be looked at.
Okay.
But I would move Deep Brook right to the top of the list.
Is this in order? These are each looked at
Not-
separately, right? Yeah.
Not really in order
Okay.
of
Oh,
of
well,
preference
Okay.
You were
between the
talking
three.
Evergreen
but
first, Black Brook second, Deep Brook
it
third.
was, yeah, more just in the order
I
that we
would
presented
move the
them.
Mass DOT first.
Okay, okay, interesting.
Okay, I will take, if there's public comment, just for a few minutes, if anyone wants to comment, just, or not, okay? Oh. I'm sorry, but you need to come to the microphone, you need to give your name and address. And,
Hi, Joe Prosser, 150 Dunstable Road. I'm one of the houses in the little red box on that map. And we got flooded twice because of the dam on the exit from, the outlet from Swain Pond. And so right now, there's a 16-inch man-made 2x8 block, a dam in that, in that culvert right now. And so I'm just curious to know what the active measure is and how that would work. Would it essentially remove the dam so that the turtles can come up? And then when there's a threat of a storm, something's gonna magically appear to hold the water back and then go back, then disappear again? Or how does that work?
so Courtney, you need to come to the mic.
Yeah, okay,
Yep.
sorry, we got it straight. So, and Seth, you can probably chime in as well. I think there's a couple of different ways you can do it. It could be just trying to use the structure that is there to the extent we can, and putting in some type of either stop log system or gate system. We've also done it, very simply with just even a valve that is at the bottom of the structure. They can be pretty simple, but no removal of the dam. That wouldn't help us in this case. We need that there to
Why?
basically to provide the storage when we need it.
But the thing
So-
will always be full. And so there's absolutely no benefit to having the dam because it'll always be full.
You've already filled part of the water.
You've already filled it. The only benefit you get is if you introduce the dam before a storm.
Maybe I didn't explain it well enough. So the idea would be that we'd actually draw down the water below where it would naturally sit during before a storm event, to provide more storage, provide more place for the water coming, at the watershed to go. So you would see the level draw down, and then it would fill in as the storm happens and hold there until the flooding downstream releases a bit, and then you can drop it back down as you need to.
And who's responsible for that? Because what happens if it starts to flood my property?
There's a lot of things that we need to think about until we get to that point. So it's it would be part of the permitting process and part of the whole design process as we think about that. So I can't answer that specifically. So a lot of questions still to be answered. We're very much at the concept level.
Right, well,
But I hear you. I
Okay,
hear you.
also,
Yeah, absolutely.
with regard to environmental impact,
Right.
there's a lot of dead turtles on Dunstable Road
Mhm.
at that culvert,
Okay, okay.
because the dam blocks their access.
Got it, got it. Fair,
Okay.
fair.
All right, I'm going to,
Just,
oh, you, okay, another one?
Further
Okay,
downstream.
sure.
Oh, okay.
John Kelly, 38 Dunshire Drive. Okay, the one, I appreciate you bringing Deep Brook into one of the problems we have with, and we spoke last week or 2 weeks ago, if you dam Swan Pond, okay, you're basically retaining water already. If you keep the dam open, which is always has been, and I checked with as many people as you want, the only people that ever closed that dam up were Mo and Gladys Putnam, who owned the house at the corner. They dammed it. Other people released it all the time. If you keep that dam open, Swain Pond would have a steady flow, maintain a steady depth. Once you dam it up, you stop the water, sedimentation fills up that pond, and then the water is going to flood all the properties around there, and their insurance is outrageous. And I talked to everyone in that pond in the past week, and they all said the same thing. They don't want it dammed up. You keep it an open waterway, it stays deep, it maintains its it keeps the sediment from taking up your water space, and there's always empty water space there. We have plenty of water to keep it. You keep the dam open, the water flows, it keeps the channel open, the water continues past my house, past Dunshire Drive, and everything keeps moving along. You dam it up, you're just literally filling in your storage unit, and I can show you tons and tons
yeah,
of applications. I sent it to David, asked him to
Okay,
pass it
all right,
along.
yeah, we need
About
to
the
keep moving.
impact of small dams. This is by mass, a lot of people have done studies, universities and everything else. I'm gonna let you pass around images of Dunshire Drive. This happens more than just twice, about every other month. This moment. These are pictures of what it looks like. Nearly every other month. Right?
Okay,
Butterfield is actually the main concern. If you can keep the water, instead of storing it in the dam and then opening it up and causing that flood, keep everything moving along. And I am afraid I disagree with the culvert at 3 being the problem. Butterfield's the problem, and that's Chelmsford. It could be handled a lot sooner. And in the past, when I've been in contact with Mass DOT, they were actually considering very strongly doing the culvert themselves. But they felt that the impact would be negative because of Butterfield. Thank you.
okay, thank you very much.
Big thing is, David, please don't dam up. Swain
Okay,
Pond.
so thanks very much to the folks at Kleinfelter and the DPW. Tony, you have something to add? Yeah.
Sorry, I just want one point of clarification. It's not damming up Swain Pond. There's existing controls out there. It would be maintaining that level, lowering it for 1 foot of water to exit before a storm when we know there's a storm of a certain precipitation coming in, then putting that block back in so it maintains. Then that storm would refill the area. It's not damming or changing infrastructure to the level I think that people are thinking it is. It would just be if we know there's a major storm event coming, drop it 1 foot, then that storm would fill it back in. That prevents it from flooding further. Not changing or altering the total volume or changing the level of the pond at all.
Okay.
There's an existing condition there that we'd
Thank
want to
you.
maintain.
Okay, thank you. We're going to close the discussion now. Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. Thanks to DPW for sponsoring this and making this happen. We do need to move on, though, so. We will continue with the regularly scheduled portion of our agenda. We are at the part of open session with citizens' concerns. Do we have any public input concerns relating to issues within the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, that are not currently the subject of a pending public hearing or elsewhere in our agenda? Anybody from the public comments? No? Okay. And then we have Mr. Brian Mayer from the DCR, Department of Conservation and Recreation from Massachusetts. And he looks like he's in the room.
Yes, I am.
All right. So this is about trees up at the top. I heard somebody talking about Robin Hill earlier. So
Yes,
this is trees
so
at the top
I
of Robin
actually
Hill.
put my name and phone number on here, but if you ever get to reach me, you can get it through Dave. I'm the district fire warden for Fire District 6, and that's the 32 towns in our district. It goes from Ashby to Stoneham. And we presently run 2 fire towers. One is up on Gibbet Hill in Groton, and the other one here is in Chelmsford. And if you look back in the history of Chelmsford, it's always had a fire tower. There was a garrison up there, I think in the 1637s, there was a garrison up there that used signal fires. So with 400 feet of elevation, it's always worked as a fire tower. From that point on, we've had a 30-foot wooden tower put up by the region, by the area, local towns actually. Fell over in a hurricane. They built a new one. It went up to about 45 feet and still had a 360-degree panoramic view of the area. That got knocked over in the 1938 hurricane. So if my history says, in '64, they rebuilt it to what you see now. And that is in the blue box. That is a postage stamp 50 by 50 size of the fire tower. That was taken back when it was put up. You can still kind of see the outcropping of rocks where one of the stabilizers on it. So that gives you an idea. If you look real quickly, that is looking through the trees to try and find a fire. That's when you're working in a fire tower, you basically have an Alliday table, and it's a giant compass in the center of your room with a sight. And as you go around, you can panoramically view 360 degrees and triangulate with the other fire towers. This view is not allowing us to triangulate with several of our towers in the northeast, and that would be Essex County. And that would be where we had a lot of those big fires that we had last year. Middleton Pond, North Andover, Boxford, Ipswich, Salem, Rockport. We look into those areas. With that view, we're not able to really assist them till that smoke gets big enough to get above those trees. Also, that tree, that view you're looking at right there looks in the Lowell Drake at Tingsboro State Forest. Why is this an issue for us? None of these fires are started naturally. Somebody's running around out there. We want to get on these earlier. The opportunity with tower spots, confirmation of tower spots is huge. We can get people moving in the right direction at the right time. Another thing about this tower, it also runs the radio communications for the district, the town, state police, microwaves are involved. So every now and then, we've had to work and take down a couple select trees so they could get the beams through the trees. It's getting more difficult because the trees keep growing, because they're about 80 years old, about 80 feet tall, 70 years old, I guess. And it just, from the west to the northeast, it really blocks it out. What I'm proposing is if you'd like to top the trees or cut them down. Dave, do you have control? Can you bump ahead the next slide? That's the postage stamp. So in the northern half, that's where most of the trees, the pine trees are.
In the blue, or?
No, the blue is the area where the fire tower is, the radio shacks.
Which way is north? Is that?
North would be straight up.
Okay.
That's a typical view trying to look up into Essex County. Presently, there's probably 30. They're all been dotted with a blue dot on it. So if we ever wanted to do a site walk, I am open to show you that area. It's town-owned, so anybody can go up there. If you'd like to visit the fire tower at any time, my number, Dave has it. I'll give it to you at the end. We can speak over here. I can bring you up there and see what we're dealing with. And that's what it should look like when you look out the tower with the picture on the left. It's good. What you see on the right, that's what we're dealing with now. And I believe that's all I have. If you have any questions, comments?
Can I ask a really simple question? Is it crazy to raise the tower?
That has been proposed. I don't think you can due to the fact it's engineered, and then when you put the radio antennas they have on there now, because there's about 6 or 7 dishes are up there, I don't think they would do it. They just rebuilt the cabin.
How high is it?
It's 70 feet, 68 feet,
Okay, okay.
but the trees, when it was built, they probably weren't even there. It was a field.
Yeah, all right, questions from the commission? Peter, you have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation.
No problem.
I've had a chance to be in the tower and watch your
Oh,
staff at work, and it is pretty amazing. Nobody understands that's what's going on up there, if you haven't been there. How many trees are you guessing?
there's about 30.
And are they mostly, you
They're
did say they're
pine.
mostly pine?
Yeah.
And then two questions. One is, I'm not an expert, but I don't know if you can actually top a pine tree.
I don't know.
So
I'm just
that's
trying to
something to
give you
think about.
options.
And
Yeah.
secondly, if this were approved, is DCR in a position to plant something else there that maybe a shorter tree, but something so it's not just denuded? I know there. I know.
I can't answer that. That's above me. I think it would just kind of let it go and maintain it as a smaller open area.
I'm sorry. That would be just a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Your intention is to leave it alone. I mean, it's town land, but
Yes,
you would
town
just-
land, unless you want us to help.
So that's the question I would ask: is what happens? Maybe it does repopulate with.
Yeah, and then we'll be
trees on
doing
it.
this when
I don't know. So we can
somebody
talk
else's
about that.
job, 30 years from now,
Yeah,
40
right.
years, but.
Thanks.
Chris, you have anything?
Yeah, I've been up in the tower too. It's an amazing view when you get up to the top there.
Yep.
But it was 20 years ago when I was up there, so I'm sure you can't quite see what you looked at.
When I started here in 2010, I could see through there. I mean, we could go in between the tops of the trees, but now it's unusable to the north.
Yeah, so no, I support this project. I support it. It's, public safety for people, but also overall, if we can get out there and stop these fires early, it's going to protect the forest and the habitat and the animals that we're supposed to be protecting. So I support this.
Mark?
Yeah, I was out there probably 40, 50 years ago.
We're dating ourselves.
Yeah, I know it. And that was, I'd like to have a field trip out there.
Were you supposed to be out there?
I think this requires a site visit, to go out there again.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that's needs to be done.
Thank you.
But I'm just wondering, I want to know, get a better remedy on what you're gonna do when you do cut the trees down. Like Peter says, I want something. if
You want
cut the tree
something in
cut down, I
return.
want to put another tree back.
Right.
At least 1 to 1.
Yes, I mean, I can let the next generation of fire wardens present this again, but,
That's a valid point.
Yeah.
We're here for conservation.
and understood. Something slow growing, I guess, we can maintain. It's the town's decision on that.
Okay, Bill?
I support this, yep.
Yeah, John?
I support it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Would you wouldn't be, you'd cut them off and you'd leave the stump, right?
Well, we can't cut, state can't work on non-state, but that would be, and I should say this is your choice to pay for. You could have a tree company come in and take the lumber for the cost of the, for the cut. And then you just say, listen, this is what you're gonna leave on the ground for regeneration. And do it that way, and then you can repurpose the wood into anything you really want to. It can be made into park benches, large 2x timber lumber for the highway department for anything they might need it.
So if I'm understanding this right, you're asking the town to
Yeah, the
take care of
town, because
this?
we're not allowed to cut
Okay.
on non-state property.
So the town would have to fund
Unless
this
we'd have to-
one way or another?
Yeah.
Well, but I think the way it worked when the state police recently took out some trees, to protect their communications, they hired and paid the contractor.
Yeah.
That's something you
I-
can't do.
No, because
Different agency or
it's not our
different-
property. We're just asking
Yeah.
for basically permission if you guys would do us a favor.
So,
Simply put.
so I think we want to review this a little more. I'd like to
Yes.
get some, did our tree warden leave? Our tree warden was in the room, but I don't think she's here anymore. She's gone. I would like to get the tree warden involved in this a little bit, and maybe the tree committee.
The tree guys from the tree committee.
Yeah, and,
Perfect
There
timing.
she is.
Heard a name.
I'm wondering if you heard much of this,
I
or
heard it. I didn't hear it, but I heard tree warden. Where?
I'm wondering, so what the recommendation is that the town would take down 30 trees near the top of Robin Hill, at the top of Robin Hill, to preserve the view for the fire tower for the state fire district. And so it's kind of, what would we be looking for in the town in terms of tree protection? What your thoughts are on this. We don't have to make a decision tonight.
Sure,
In fact,
yeah.
I would recommend we don't make a decision
So
tonight.
we would review the request. I usually go out there, look at the site. So I guess first have the trees all tagged. We look at them, potentially also looking at the health of a tree, because if they're all deteriorated and healthy, potentially, that's just, we look at that when we make a consideration. We look for, I guess, a one-to-one replacement, typically as well. But here, I guess you don't want to plant new trees. So we also look at potentially offsetting it, and we would plant 30 trees elsewhere in town. So it's a process, I guess. First, I can't make a decision tonight. First, we would look to see the request and if a tree hearing's needed too. That's the thing. So I have to look at so it's a couple things. So we can coordinate on that and go through
Cost
that
to the
process.
town, too. The cost to the town
Yeah,
for
so
cutting the
if,
trees.
yes, 30 trees, us removing two, we'd look at the cost of that as well. And so I guess we have to go through that whole process.
All right, then I think what we need to do is reach out to the DCR, get some more details on this, do a little review of this. I would suggest anybody from the commission get up there. I think you said they were marked? They're blue
Yeah, they're
tagged?
already painted with a blue dot.
Painted with a blue dot, okay, all right. So they're fairly easy to see, and they're close to the tower-ish?
Yep.
Okay, all right, they're not down the hill or anything, it's the ones?
Nope, they're just, if you pull in, you got the tower right in front of you, you'll start seeing them
Okay,
all scattered.
and they mostly to the north,
Mostly to the north, and then some to the east.
east?
Yeah.
Okay, okay,
By this photo, that's looking just about due north.
okay, all right. I think that's
We
probably
can
our
look
next
at it.
steps.
Yeah, and Christine, you know this, but I'll just make a comment. We could certainly get the forestry part of the tree committee to render some ideas,
Sure.
so,
Okay.
to help.
And thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
And I'm going to guess the sooner the better.
That would help.
Timing is the sooner the better. Yeah.
Yes, and I want to thank you for having me. I mean, I'm proposing something that's kind of going to be tough for some neighbors. I understand that.
Yep.
But
Okay.
maybe we can work something out.
And just a comment, it's been on my to-do list to contact your organization's forester, which I
Yes.
understand comes to communities to offer suggestions for some of our forested lands.
Yes,
not
our service
necessarily this
forester,
one.
yep.
So I don't know if we could, work together even beyond the fire tower, but that would be another way to turn this into a
Yes, I will. I'll
beneficial project.
I'll let them know.
Okay.
Please, thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much, Brian. Brian,
you.
yeah. Thank
Yep.
you very much.
Thank you, Brian.
Appreciate it. Yep. Okay, next up, we have 100 Pine Hill Road, a request for clarification on Conservation Commission policy for cleanup of storm damage in jurisdictional areas, and we have Mr. Eric Ketchaturian.
Perfect, yeah. Eric
Good evening.
Historian, 100 Pine Hill Road. Thanks to the commission for having me tonight. So I moved to 100 Pine Hill Road about 9 months ago. And down, so it's two tax parcels, 100 Pine Hill Road, which is the main structure of the house, about an acre, and then Pine Hill Road off, which is about 2 acres behind it, which goes all the way down to 495. Down the western side of both parcels, I have a stream that runs underneath Pine Hill Road and then comes onto my property. So it is worth noting that we knew this when, admittedly, when we bought the property, it's technically at the highest risk for FEMA flood zoning, and that's primarily due to the risk to the off-road piece of the land that is behind the main structure. But when we moved in, we noticed that, and David has pictures, I've been talking to Dave for the past couple weeks, there's a pretty good amount of Mother Nature doing its thing and trees falling and starting to dam the stream pretty close within the technical 100 Pine Hill Road part of the property, so pretty close to the street, as you can see. And it has gotten worse, obviously, with the winter, cold weather, more trees coming down, and it's exacerbated. And you can see it's, that's a pretty good sized log right there. The depth is thrown off a little bit by how close and how zoomed in I was. So my main concern, and then kind of, protocol or resolution I'm looking for from the committee is, I'm worried about, it's already a high risk flood zone. I'm worried about damming. This is only going to kind of continue into the future. And so I actually had brought out a contractor to get a quote to do some other work as well on the property away from the stream to prune some broken limbs and whatnot, but also to clear this landscape. And they had told me, luckily, to reach out to you to figure out what the protocol is. And that's kind of why I'm here today. So I have a contractor ready. My concern, obviously, there's an optics point of view, without a doubt, but also, making sure that this is flowing as steadily as possible. The land around it, obviously, is already pretty damp and moist, and is only going to continue as we head into the spring and summer months. So, I'm hoping to do this as soon as possible. Obviously, we're pre-bloom as well, so that makes life easier for the contractor. So, but also looking to kind of get clarity around what kind of the path is, more generally, as this is going to continue to happen over time. This, I think, is an accumulation of something that's been disregarded by the previous owners who flipped the house and the previous owner who was the original owner. So just trying to get clarity on what kind of to do both immediately, and then, what is, the conservation's opinion, or the committee's opinion, like what is kind of appropriate steps to, take care of this, like as soon as it kind of starts sprouting up in the future as well.
Okay. So my first comment is thank you very much to your contractor for suggesting you come here.
Yeah.
To the Conservation Commission. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
It doesn't always happen. We get phone calls from neighbors who say some contractor's cutting everything down.
I'm sure.
So I'm really glad to hear that. Why don't we just start with some questions? Chris, you want to start? You have a question?
No, I mean, in general, I think it's always the best point to start with is our agent. There's certain activities that are kind of minor activities under our regulations, and people come talk to our agent, kind of assess whether it's a minor matter that can be maybe a site visit for the agent to go out, take a look, and see that there's no adverse impact on our wetlands or our wetlands values. That's step one. And then a lot of times the agent will take a look, and it might be something that's okay within an exception or not. If it's not, then the next step is to come in here for a formal permit hearing. This the minor kind of approaches this request for determination, and that's a filing and a hearing, and we kind of then take a vote, and it's all done formally.
Got it.
But that's kind of what I've seen over the years as the process. Those are my thoughts,
Yep.
Carl. Yeah.
Actually, David, did you go to the site? Have you been there?
I have not had a chance to yet, but
Do you have any other comments you want to add?
I think, and I said this before, from a general perspective, I think the commission should have a stormwater cleanup policy. In my hometown of Boxborough, the policy is when storm damage is an imminent threat to human health, safety, or property, then the homeowner can just go ahead and clear it out. Doesn't necessarily have to be the same one here. I think it could be taken on a case-by-case basis. I would say, from a general perspective, my primary concerns would be, heavy machinery operating in or very close to the wetlands. If I go out and take a look at a particular situation, and I'm comfortable that there is no significant impact, from in that regard, then I think it's perfectly appropriate for the commission to give me the authority to go ahead and allow it or take and proceed.
Okay. Mark?
No, I agree with everything that was said. I think it should be done with just hand, chainsaws and stuff, nothing with equipment. Especially if it's gonna be a problem with, water back into somebody's basement.
Yeah.
Losing property because of that, because I'm going through the same thing in my house now too. But, no, I have no problem with this, as long as David approves it, or what you have some kind of thought process how you're gonna do it.
Yeah, and I've been pushing the contractor to get the quote, and I actually got it earlier today, but it's, just the cost and the estimate. I don't have details on what it would entail. So that's something I can follow up with if the next steps are to have David do a site visit and we can have that conversation and I can give him further details on
Okay.
what they're thinking.
Bill, you have any comments?
I agree with Mark as far as equipment, not using equipment, doing handwork, but I would feel comfortable with David being able to do this on a case-by-case basis. And unless it was something really out there, if you could handle it through your office rather than come before us, I think that's the better option. Because I hate to see people have to pay money to come to us when you could take a quick look at it, it's not a big deal, or you can tell them, okay, we need to go before the commission.
Yeah,
So I would feel comfortable with your,
And I think that's the most effective way to operate from the commission's perspective as well.
right.
Okay. John, anything?
I agree 100%.
Okay.
Just
I guess
have
I'm
Dave
not-
take a look.
I'm sorry, John.
No, just have Dave take a look and figure it out.
I don't think people should clean a swamp area like that because it doesn't look nice.
Right.
That's not what it should be done.
No, it's habitat too,
Right.
that you're
Right.
pulling out of there.
Right. Right, there is a habitat factor here, but when it's gonna flood your lawn or the street or your driveway, that becomes an issue. Peter, do you have any thoughts, any comments?
Well, yeah, I appreciate what you guys are saying, but I don't know the scope of the project.
Yep.
I mean, are you talking about taking out a couple of those logs that we looked at in the first picture? But then you talked about a contractor doing some other work. So that,
The other work is unrelated to the stream.
So-
That's on the property.
Yeah.
It's basically pruning broken branches that
Got
are
it.
kind of behind the property on the off-road, like away from this,
Right.
this
So-
site.
excuse me, what would you like to do with the logs in the stream?
Just
Clean the whole thing down?
Yeah, basically, because as you can see, there's one picture where it's better
Yeah.
than the others. Like you can see that on the other side, I think it's one of the earlier ones, David. Sorry about that. There was like 4 pictures or so. That on the other side of this one, like right there in that bottom right corner, the water's more still, and you could see that it's discolored and like it just doesn't flow as well ahead of that. So it's kind of already begun the process of damming. And admittedly, like there is still good enough flow past this, but I just want to maximize it.
Yeah, here's the problem. These streams are supposed to have logs in them.
Okay.
But obviously, we don't want people's yards flooding. So I'm looking at
Right.
the contours. This stream is 10 feet below your basement. It's not going to flood your house.
That's right. I just worry about the quality of the soil too, right? And the water and like what that means structurally.
Quality of the water?
Quality of the soil. Just meaning like water content and what that means over time and like.
Well, your second property, the one you described, is an official wetland.
Right.
So it's supposed to be wet.
I understand. And this part that I want to clear out is on the front part of the property. So this is the 100 Pine Hill Road
Right.
parcel.
Yeah, I
So-
guess my only point is that clearing out that whole stream is different
Right.
than taking out a couple of big trees that you're worried about creating a dam. So I'm just trying to understand what you're seeking approval for. Is it just sort of clear out all the vegetation in the stream or take out 2 or 3 big trees? That's the question.
Basically what's been shown here. Basically what's
Yeah.
visible on the 100 Pine Hill Road part that is causing, the beginnings of visible damming.
Okay.
And then having kind of protocol, as you guys have already
Yeah.
discussed, on what the process would be when it inevitably happens again, albeit like I'm not certain because I've only been there for 9 months. I think this has accumulated over some time.
Sure.
So, knock on wood, it's not something that comes up
And the
frequently, but-
longer it's there, the better habitat it becomes.
Yeah.
So it's always better to get rid of fallen stuff sooner.
Yeah.
rather than- I
Sooner
know that's
rather
not
than
always,
later,
but
yeah.
I know that's not always possible, but
You're not looking for approval tonight anyways.
Well,
This
well-
is just for guidance.
Yeah, I think what I heard is
Yeah.
let David give him,
Yeah.
give him the on-site guidance, and we're good to go. David heard our concerns. He has a good idea of what our concerns are, and we trust he'll make the right call on the site. I think that's what I heard.
Yep. And that would be a great chance, David, for you to explain what the Wetland Protection Act means, because there's actually a 100-foot buffer from the wetlands and a
Yeah.
200-foot buffer from the stream that fall under the regulations of town. I mean, you can do stuff in there,
Sure.
but you have to do exactly what you're doing tonight.
Yeah, no, I
is
mean,
think about it.
obviously, it's a large property too, like the 2 acres behind it, and
Right.
so I would be lying if I said, machinations of what can be done there from a personal use haven't.
You can't do anything because it's a
Right,
regulated wetland.
of course. So,
But you
I
will learn,
understand, yeah.
you will learn to appreciate all the critters.
Yeah, no, for sure.
The frogs right
Honestly, we love the property.
Yep. It's a good
There's
spot.
a ton of wildlife.
Yeah.
It's Misty Meadow feeding in there.
We,
from-
yeah,
Yeah.
part of why we moved here is because we wanted
Yep.
to
Yeah.
be further away from the concrete jungle that we moved from. So
Yeah.
we appreciate it, and we just wanted
Up
to
to David now, give him
operate
guidance.
well and us to cohabitate well.
And
Okay,
welcome,
let-
welcome to town.
Yeah, thank you very
Yep.
much.
Very good. Thanks very much.
So,
Thank you
so if
very
you
much.
could have your contractor send me a detailed work description of what he wants to do, then we can schedule an appointment for me to go out and take a look.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank your contractor. So,
Don't take this personally.
we are now up to the report from the Planning Board Liaison to the Conservation Commission, Mr. Chris LaValle. Hello, Chris. Good evening.
Good evening. So last meeting, we heard a revised lighting bylaw from Kelly Beatty, and we re-voted on the revised version, and it passed 6-1. We also continued our discussion about Kate's Corner and potential improvements to the zoning there. We also discussed looking into one-stop grant program to help fund some comprehensive review of zoning maps and uses, specifically around getting an updated market analysis for the Route 3 495 area to see what the current market is potentially like, and maybe that'll help drive some changes in the zoning use tables and things like that for the future. We'll continue that discussion on the grant funding this week. We'll also continue the Kate's Corner discussion this week. We have a discussion on a property on Old Westford Road, actually, for an A&R. The old property that had the cow and the horse. We
And
also
a notice of intent has been filed for 2 houses on that property.
Yep.
Oh, really?
That's next week, yep, next meeting.
We also have a discussion on 11 Cushing Place and that boardwalk that has never been built.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
Oh, time. The what? The
Boardwalk, it
Oh,
put
the
down at the Trevor's favorite place. All right, down in the center. Thank you,
Thanks.
Chris. All right, speaking of Trevor, we are now at the regulatory portion of our hearing. We are doing an RDA, request for determination of applicability. Town of Chelmsford, 71, 75, 88, Garrison Road and 2 Pinewood Road, right-of-ways. And we have Trevor Collins, and we have a notice to be read.
Legal notice pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, and Section 40, and the Chelmsford Wetlands Bylaw, Chapter 187. The Chelmsford Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing here at the town offices at 50 Villica Road on Tuesday, March 25th, 2025, at 7 p.m. to consider the request for determination of applicability filed by the town of Chelmsford for proposed work within 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands at the paved public road right-of-way in the vicinity of 71, 75, and 88 Garrison Road and 2 Pinewood Road. The project entails installation of 3 new catch basins, 2 new drain manholes, and associated trunk lines. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chris. Trevor, why don't you get up and tell us about this project?
Hello, my name is Trevor, Assistant Town Engineer for the town of Chelmsford. What we got going on is we plan on reclaiming Garrison Road from Littleton Road to Pinewood Road. During the reclaim process, we do full pulverization of the asphalt, regrade the subbase, and pave back new layers of asphalt to your surface course. So in that, I'm able to adjust grades as needed to get proper drainage throughout the roadway. And in this area where I'm proposing a new drainage, it's not a new drainage system in its entirety because it's tying into an existing drain line into an existing drain outfall. But I need to add some catch basins to tie into that to make sure we capture that water in the low spots on the roadway. Like the proposal read, I plan on putting in 2 new catch basins that will link into two new manholes along a trunk line that will then later attach into the manhole that sends it out to the outfall behind 88 Garrison Road. The other location is a little further west in front of 90 Garrison Road, I believe it is. And all I propose to do is there's a catch basin on one side of the road, and since I put a crown in the road, I need to make sure I capture the water on the other side of the road in that same low point. So I'm dropping in a catch basin on the opposite side of the road and piping it into that catch basin, which again outlets into the existing drain line location. So this work is all within the 100-foot buffer area. And that's why I'm here. And, all the new drainage systems are within the current paved roadway area. Other than that, the only other thing I would like to say is I got a sequence of work that's typical by a contractor that I sent to David. Typically with the reclaim process, what we do is the existing road stays in place. We go in, we install the drainage system, and then we'll temp pave back in the trench until we're ready to reclaim the road, and then we'll fully pulverize the roadway and repave it. It's just easier to do it that way so that things aren't drawn out with having just a gravel base. That's the project.
Thank you. David, do you have any comments? You've reviewed this?
Yep, met on site with Trevor. It's easily be a negative determination, just installation of, I think, erosion control as necessary.
Okay. All right. Peter, questions?
Yeah, just a couple. Hi, Trevor. The total length of the project, I know you sent a lot of drawings and I was looking at them, but I had trouble. The total length along the road, roughly? Is it a couple hundred feet or 1,000?
In just the drainage area?
The amount of pavement that you need to remove or to...
In just the drainage area or the whole reclaim area of the road?
I
Linear
think
feet of road?
just for this project.
Just for this
project.
This filing.
It's about 250 feet of pipe.
Okay, sure.
So yeah, it's the low spot's about 250 feet away from that manhole that's existing, and that's why I have to bring it all the way over there. Right. Otherwise, I'd have to install leaching basins, and I don't really like those because they don't last as long as catch basins and trunk lines.
Right, and my ignorance, I'm sorry, does this, do the town's stormwater regs or DPW's stormwater regs apply to this kind of a project, do you know? Or is there an exemption?
What specific regs are you? I install the trunk lines where possible. We put it.
I think he's referring to MS4.
MS4.
I'm just trying to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't do all those back calculations.
So
in this exercise.
Okay. Well, not to belabor the point, I'm just curious. I mean, is it our commission's role to judge whether this complies with the stormwater handbook, or is there a waiver or exemption?
Well, in my opinion, it does comply with the both the state and town
good.
Regulations.
I defer to your analysis. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Chris?
Good.
Mark?
No, I don't have any questions with this. This is fine.
Bill, you got anything?
No.
John? No?
Oh, I'm good.
Okay, good. So no outfalls, no new outfalls
No,
on this?
no
so-
new
so-
outfalls. It's all tying into the existing system.
All right.
Public?
Take a motion.
Public?
All right, good. Thank you very much. Any public input on this? Anybody in the public have a concern or a comment or?
I
no?
move then that we
Okay.
close this public hearing.
Motion from Chris to close the hearing.
Second.
Second from Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion, the hearing is closed. Take a motion on negative,
I move that we approve this project with a negative determination number 3.
Second.
motion, any special conditions?
No.
No.
Okay. Motion from Chris, second from Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
I kind of missed the meeting, so I'll abstain.
You'll abstain, okay, all right. So all, except for Bill voted in favor, Bill abstained, Bill Bynes abstained, okay.
Thank you.
Thank
So,
you.
so what's your schedule again, Trevor, on this?
So this bid is going out on April 2nd, and then the bid date is April 17th. In the bid documents, it says, I have a line item that says they have to comply with all erosion controls that you guys set forth. So on April 17th, we'll hopefully know who our contractor will be. We'll set a pre-construction meeting where we'll have David there to discuss what this determination entailed, and we'll go from there. And obviously, as they give me a schedule, I'll keep you guys updated.
But it's summer 2025.
Yes, correct. Yep.
Summer,
Trevor.
fall, whatever, yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Trevor. Okay. Okay, very good. Next on our agenda we have is the closed hearing on 10 Hildreth Street, the notice of intent that we approved last week. David sent out the conditions, I'll get that on the way back. The order of conditions to review. I know, David, you were also going to discuss with town council. I don't know if you were able to do that.
No, I was not able to do that. Just remind me what those questions were again.
I just remember that you said that you wanted to check with town council. There were issues with the PFAS, the Board of Health process. You said this was similar to the Billerica Road.
Yeah, so I have put in, I
filing.
don't know whether you had a chance to read the draft or not, but I did put in, a condition which I feel does address those concerns. Certainly open to, editing them or editing this condition if commission members would like to see something additional. So I have that up on the screen right now.
The four main, or five main things I had my notes were that the applicant complies with all local, state, and federal environmental laws and regulations, including Chelmsford Board of Health. The turtle protection plan would be filed and approved by the agent. The restoration plan filed and approved by the agent. The perpetual restriction on Lot 4 to protect the habitat, and there would be continuous monitoring of the site to protect the turtle habitat.
Yeah, that's all in here.
Those are, okay.
But with regard to the concerns that were raised about, the existing contamination, and, potential impacts to the drinking water supply, I'm intending that this condition number 26 address those concerns.
That looks like what we were looking for. Chris, is that what you were looking for in the
Yeah,
in the
yeah, no,
meeting?
I read it over too. It looks good to me.
You
With
were-
one exception. And this might be what you were going to check with council on, but we've been down this road before. The way this is written, it doesn't require the applicant to go through the DEP cleanup program. It simply says, give us whatever information you have,
Yeah.
which is different than saying, we don't want you digging up a contaminated site so close to our well field. So it doesn't say that, it just says, just tell us whatever it is you've done with the state. And as we have learned before, the state tends to be behind or has a very long cleanup period. So it's really,
Yeah, I think what you're suggesting, Peter, and it's perfectly legitimate. But I think the bottom line is that the commission does not have the legal authority to ensure clean up the site. I mean, by providing the information and the documentation, the commission can verify that it is going through the process. But that's really all the commission can do.
yeah, I mean, we've been down this road before.
Which is why we're looking at some bylaw changes. Because we're kind of hamstrung, I think.
In that regard, yes. Agreed.
Okay. We don't have to vote, I mean, unless somebody has an issue with what's in here. I didn't look for typos or anything like that. Has Brian reviewed this,
Yes.
the applicant?
He was on-
You there, Brian?
He was on earlier.
I am.
Oh, hello, Brian.
So David was, for the record, Brian Goodrow with Hancock Associates. Sorry, I wasn't able to attend in person, but David did share the draft order with me today. I did not have any comments. I forwarded off to the applicant as well as our counsel, and I have not heard back. So,
Okay.
So I think all that is left for us, honestly, is to sign the document.
Well,
I do know,
to vote on it.
Vote.
Oh, we haven't voted yet?
Voted to close the hearing, have not voted
We
on.
didn't take a vote on the
on
conditions,
order,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. And I just note somebody's hands up out in the back, I
No,
think, but it's
that's
we
a-
closed the hearing, or is that
that's-
just because of an injury?
That's an injury.
Injury? Okay. good.
I noticed
Maybe
that
I'll
much
laugh.
earlier. She's had her hand up the whole meeting.
No, it's okay. All right.
Thanks for noticing, Chris.
Well, I just, we didn't want to ignore that. So I make a motion then that we approve the order of conditions as drafted by our agent.
Motion from Chris,
Second.
second from Bill. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and Peter has to abstain. You were in favor.
I agree with what Peter has to say, but we can't enforce it,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna vote. I'm not gonna vote for it.
You're gonna vote against. All in favor. Nay. So we have 4 in favor and 1 against and 1 abstain. Okay. Thanks. Okay, I think we're done on this topic. Okay, continual business, no, I'm sorry. We are now at the 61 Smith Street. And David, you said that is not ready and they are asking for a request.
I received a request for a continuance, yes, to April 8th.
Take a motion to continue this to our next meeting on April 8th.
So moved.
Motion from Chris,
Second.
second from Bill. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion passes, unanimous. Now we are at discussion. This is the 3 letters that Peter has provided to us. One is on the rodenticides, one is on the lighting warrant article. Peter, when you walked out of the room, Chris Lavalley said that they passed that last night, 6-1 at the planning board, last week.
Good.
And then the third one is something else.
Can I make a suggestion? It's, the time-critical letter is the one supporting the Merrimack watershed project, because that is a proposal, a grant application Courtney Thompson is working on with Megan Tenhoff from NIMCOG, and it fits what we're trying to do here. And they have a deadline, So I'm hoping that we can get you, if you're willing, Carl, to sign this before you head off on vacation.
I can
The other two, the rodenticide is not that urgent. And the support of the lighting bylaw, I think if we want to do that letter, that would be important to get out now, but not as time critical as the proposal letter.
Why don't you walk through the letter on the watershed?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Our regional planning agency is trying to get some data, do a study very similar to what you just heard from Kleinfelder, but for the whole watershed, all the 8 NIMCOG towns, and maybe a couple of others. And the idea is to do exactly what Kleinfelder did, figure out what's going to be flooding as it rains harder. So that would really help us, because we're currently, and we might have to change our regs if we want to use it, but we're currently looking at old data when we look at the flood zone on the town GIS. So the purpose of this is to get a better analysis of what's likely to flood in the whole region, including Chelmsford. So that's the short version.
When I'm looking at it, and the wording says the Merrimack watershed, and I know that everything's relative. That includes Concord River as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And it actually is additional towns than the just the 8 that NIMCOG works under. It includes Bedford and a few others.
Okay.
So my attitude, pure and simple, is we're going to get a bunch of smart people to help us assess our watersheds. It's really the bottom line here.
And we don't have any further commitment
No.
from our point of view, other than be informed, be supportive, and
Correct. There's none of this in-kind services or actual funding. And I will say, if the commission would like, I'd be happy to be the one that, works with them or does whatever and report back.
okay with this.
I make a motion, Carl, that we approve this letter as drafted and that you sign the letter.
Second.
Motion from Chris, second from Bill, all in
Down
favor?
if you're willing.
Aye.
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 Aye, sorry.
We all said yes, so.
All right, and then the second one, if you want to dive into it, and if you're tired, I guess we could not do it, but my thought was, David, help me out here, but this commission has talked a number of times about how outdoor lights can mess up our goal of protecting habitat, and that's part of why, was it Kelly Beatty? Sorry, Kelly, if I got your name wrong. Gave us a presentation a while back, and the whole idea is that I don't want to get into the lighting code because I don't understand it all. The planning board did a lot of that work, and I think Chris did. But the bottom line is, instead of shining a spotlight out here that blinds nighttime critters, you put them down on your property, is the simple version. So what I tried to do, Carl, is honor your request to just say, look, one of our mission is to protect habitat, and this would be good. But we're not, the lighting experts, so we defer to the planning board's work on the actual language. Because, I don't understand all the language. Then the only thing I will mention is in our bylaw, there's about 13 of these so-called values, the flooding, the groundwater. And the letter says 3 of our values that we're here to protect are benefit from this thing: wildlife habitat, the rare species stuff. David, you remember the turtle? We had a bit of discussion about lights and turtles. And then we have a value in our town bylaw that is simply called aesthetics.
Yeah, you didn't spell it right.
Did I spell it wrong? I might have.
Yeah.
I did look it up.
Because I'm looking at it now, and it's got the spell check thing
There
saying.
is a problem, yes.
Oh, is there really?
Second paragraph, last word.
No kidding. Well, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I had somebody proofread it and change all that stuff in this version of the letter.
Okay.
So.
I don't think that is correct, though.
Oh, the one I wrote isn't correct?
That's not correct.
It's not.
No, I
This is
changed it. I
correct.
changed
That's
it.
correct.
I
But
changed
this
it.
is correct.
I went through and did
This
all the
one's
typos.
correct.
All right. So,
And it appears twice.
Okay, so
Sorry.
I apologize if you sent a revised version.
I didn't. No, I didn't send it because I just did it.
yeah.
Because I asked my wife to read it for me.
All right, so the suggestion is that we are
Sign it.
that we sign it, in that the gist of the letter is that it's supportive of our values.
Correct.
Without being
Correct.
specific out the details.
Correct.
And honestly, it's a good point, because I know, like, I think someone brought it up, you might have brought this up a year ago. And actually, I know personally, I've actually made some changes to my own lighting at home, kind of following up on this, because I really don't need to have all those big lights out there for security purposes where, I keep them on certain hours, but some of the, I've gone to like motion detectors now with a lot of it, because I don't need to have it all lit up and stuff like that. And it's honestly, it
Yeah.
even keeps my neighbors happier too, to be honest.
Well, there's that, and I might have told this story, but I first thought about this 10, 20 years ago. I had big floodlights, and I'd hear,
Yeah.
about twice a year, I'd hear a sound as loud as somebody throwing a softball against the side of the house. And then that winter, in a snowstorm, I could see it's called the tail drag from an owl or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I realized that I did some homework, and they do tend to get blinded and then slam into things. I don't know. So.
Okay, take another motion.
I'll move that we approve this letter as well. Carl, you sign it on behalf of the commission.
Okay, motion from Chris,
Second.
second from Bill, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes, I will sign that.
And Carl, I'm sorry, there was one slight other piece. My vision, and I could do this, is to just send this to our town meeting reps and the select board, which I'm happy to do. Is that acceptable to you guys, or would you rather do it a different way? Distribution.
I
Thank you.
think send it to the,
I don't know if I get the town meeting reps.
yeah, I'm not sure I do.
Well, they're gonna be voting on the article, is the point.
I mean, do you want to maybe address it at town meeting when it comes up and just go up and
We just
basically
say,
say the commission
yeah.
took a vote and we support this?
Okay, do you want me to send this, or,
We have a
Make a phone
suggestion, I
call?
think.
oh, thank you, save me.
Yeah, Finance Committee is meeting this Thursday to talk about their recommendations and to put together their booklet. So if you wanted it included in the booklet, you could probably send it to Jim Clancy,
Kinda like that.
probably in the
That
next
makes
day or
sense.
two.
Yeah, that makes
more
sense.
Yeah, that
Yep.
makes more sense.
Yep.
yeah.
Great.
I like that.
And then I think still, town meeting, you'll
We
be
can still
there.
get up, yeah.
I'll be there,
Yep. We can get up there together.
We could do a tag team, yeah.
Tag team,
Could-
all right,
You could make me do it,
yeah,
as a
okay.
citizen.
Yeah?
Okay,
We
thank
could,
you.
We
Yeah, we
could,
could.
we could
All
put
right.
you there
Then
late
how-
at night to do it.
And then how's your energy level?
Yeah, let's move on from
You
the.
wanna just
yeah.
table because
Yeah.
it's not time
Let's move on,
critical.
because we
Good.
have still a lot,
Thank you.
yeah, but,
So thank you, everybody.
that one, that one's important too, the SCARS one, but, I don't wanna say we're tabling it for not being important, we're tabling it, because I actually would like to talk about that some more.
And it's not time critical. There's not a town meeting vote
Right.
coming up
Yeah.
that I'm aware of.
Thanks for doing all that.
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah, no,
Peter.
thank you for supporting it. I think, yeah, good
Yeah, it looked
stuff.
like a lot of work, honestly, to do
Great,
it.
we didn't have to do it.
Next on our.
You can do the next one.
I ain't doing nothing.
John is just right out there.
I don't know. I think, Bill, you wanted to write these letters. I know you did.
Fighting over it. All right, next on our update is the update on Freeman Lake, and I know I have not had a chance to get out there and look at the plan against what's there. I don't know if anyone else has yet.
I went up there.
Did you?
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else? Can we table this till the next meeting? I definitely would like to get out there, but I just didn't get a chance out there. That was kind of the next step, was to look at the proposed boundary marking locations.
And give me your feedback on those.
Yeah.
Bill, maybe we can go out
Put in
and
the
take a look.
Bill, and I'll go up to North Chelmsford.
Bill, maybe we can take a look together, if you know
Yes.
exactly where you're going.
Shots.
Huh?
Get your shots.
Shots.
Oh, yeah, we'll give you some shots
Bring
on
your
it.
passport. If you go to North Chelmsford, bring your passport.
All right, sorry that we don't have any more on that, on Freeman Lake. Anything else on that, though, David, or any other? Okay.
There, I don't know if this is relevant. I had a chance to sit through part of there was a good dialogue today, a Zoom call on the herbicide that will be coming before us. Or
Okay.
I shouldn't say it that way. The Freeman Lake treatment option, NOI, which will be coming to us in the near future. So
Okay, that's coming.
let the technical people, they were hashing it out.
Okay, next thing is our discussion and vote to designate the Wetland Bylaw and Implementing Regulations Review Subcommittee. So, I think, it was 2009 was the last time we had any changes implemented. As I understand it, was mostly worked on in 2008. Our friend Mr. McLaughlin, I think Ruth Luna, I'm not sure who else. I think, Chris, you were
I
on
was
the
on it.
committee? Were
I
you
was on
involved in that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And you're
Painfully involved, and it was there was a lot of time with it, and some of the members really went down into every little nit
So
on
you
it.
suggest that I don't get involved, right?
I don't know, it's good to have the big picture too,
yeah, that might help us, John.
the big picture.
Keep us out of the rabbit hole,
My
John.
Montana
So,
plan?
I think what we've seen in the last year or so with a lot of our hearings, that it's time to take another look at some of these. Maybe the committee will come back and say, we don't want to change anything, and that's a possible outcome. I think it's unlikely, but it's a possible one. And,
I think there'll be a few changes.
Yeah, there's definitely some things to clean up and change, but also there is a MACC template that they have that we can use as a standard and see if we're better, not as good, whatever, and maybe some other towns and maybe some other things from our learnings as well. And even some simple things, we were talking about the trail work, just some wording on some things so that it's easier to do trail things, maybe even things like we heard earlier about the stormwater cleanup, the storm damage cleanup. Maybe there's something there we can put in there. So I think I heard Peter and Chris are interested. Is there anyone else who is interested? I'm willing, but I don't want to push anyone else off. And I think 3 would be, anything more than 3, we get into a quorum.
What do you think, John?
I'm not seeing anybody jump. Okay.
Well, the idea is to do the work and bring it back to this commission
Right.
for discussion, right? Not to.
If you could limit it to 1, 2, or 3 meetings, that's great. But this can go on forever.
Agreed.
That's the
I mean,
problem.
honestly, the last time it dragged, I signed up for it last time, and it dragged on for a much longer than I had anticipated, and I was, it was a pain, and I was having to pull out of work like an hour.
Anxiety.
I had to pull out of work, and I had to pull out of work like an hour early.
Chris is going to retire to do this.
I had to leave work. I was way down in Marlboro at the time. I had to drive all the way out of there an hour early for these meetings, and it turned into like,
Yeah.
at least a dozen meetings,
Agree.
longer than I wanted. So we don't want to
Yeah.
we don't want to have it turn into that type of like.
Agree, but
too
it's got to
long.
be effective. I mean,
Right.
it's
And,
got to.
right. And the other thing,
You can make anything work if you have the time to do it.
Right.
You can stretch it out for weeks.
Yeah.
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 But I think if you put it, do you agree, Pete, if you put a time on
Absolutely.
it?
Absolutely. And my thought is, remember when we all got together like a year ago for an
It
off-site
was
or a
May,
session
yeah.
to just talk about things that we thought we could do differently?
Yep.
I'm thinking it's that kind of thing with some of these, the work that's already been done, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we'll start with what we have, and then you've got the MACC
Right.
kind of standard, and so you're gonna kind of line those up. We've
Right.
got like a couple of the other towns you're familiar with too.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple of samples, we kind of line it up. And
doesn't-
then I think in a bigger picture, you want to say like, what are things we might want to consider? Start at the bigger picture, and then maybe drill down after we've kind of come in with a few issues. And then
Well-
present it to everybody here for consensus,
Okay.
And keeping in mind that changes to the bylaw have to go to town meeting.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
Changes to the regulations are only a public hearing.
exactly.
Okay. Do they have to go to the select board? Did you check on that?
I haven't had a chance to do that yet. I know that new regulations, or when the commission first implements them, that the select board does have to also vote. I don't think that's the case for just changes, but I will
Okay.
check on that.
We certainly didn't do that in the past, doesn't necessarily mean that was the right way to do it, but I know in the past, we took a vote on the regulations and that was it, and then published them, yeah.
Okay. All right. So Peter and Chris and I and David, and if we have members of the public, and if there's anyone, I mean, we can certainly be open to input. We can figure out if we want to set up times or meetings.
Right.
I'm going to be gone for a little while, so I'll let you guys figure
Well, and
out.
I have to double check with the town clerk, just to confirm that this is subject to the open meeting law, so it has to be
Okay.
posted.
Okay.
But.
Because
yeah,
it's a
you're-
subcommittee?
Yeah.
Do,
Yes.
do,
Want to do it right, yeah.
do we want to try to get a couple public members on the committee itself? Or just do it through the open meeting law and anyone interested? If we do the open meeting, anyone,
Yeah, I think,
I think it's just,
go crazy, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it could
Well,
go.
we know one
Don't know
citizen
who you're
who's
gonna get.
interested.
Keep it small, because there has to be a public hearing, right? So the public could get involved.
Well, yes, when the commission finally decides what
Got
they
it.
want to vote on. But,
Good.
you know, just working up to that, you know, they just have to be
Why
public
don't we,
meetings.
why don't we say right now, we'll keep it to our group for now, but we're open to any input from any citizens that want to submit any suggestions. And let's-
If the meetings are public and
come.
a citizen shows up, I mean, can they provide input at the meeting?
Or do you provide input when it comes before our board as a whole?
In theory, yes.
In theory, yeah, I think the committee can manage the minutes of the meeting as opposed to asking you.
Meet at like 10 in the morning or something crazy like that, I ain't gonna.
And we're not gonna be meeting at
No.
10 in the morning.
I think we.
We're
you know,
gonna meet at your convenience.
Like we did with the open space and rec plan, we had a really good guy doing minutes, but we can probably make.
Really?
No, I meant, you know,
Now you're in trouble.
about right.
Keep taking it.
You better strike that comment.
Put that in the minutes tonight.
I meant it in that he happened to be quite good, as opposed to what I'm going to see with our three. If it's the three of us, it may not be as good, but we can manage.
I just want to make sure I understand. So are you open to having a citizen actually be on the committee?
No,
I don't think so.
no, but we might be open for some public input at some point, I think.
Yeah.
Why don't you have the public input when it comes before the board?
I like it better then, I do, I like it better, like you
I
said. in front
agree
of
with
us.
you.
Yeah.
Put together what you want, have a meeting, let them listen to it then.
Right,
Then bring it back here and we have a discussion and take it from there.
right.
Okay. Let's do it. That's what I'm hearing, so let's go with
Are they gonna be
that.
welcome to attend these meetings or not?
Well, David's gonna find out if,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that it does have to be a public,
Posted.
meeting
Yeah.
subject to the
We'll post
open
it,
meeting
so
law.
we
Yeah, but it doesn't mean we have to take public input.
We don't.
We don't have to, I think, but
No,
you'll find out.
no, you don't have to.
No,
You
it's not
can
here.
if you can if
It's
you want
just a
to.
public meeting.
Right, it's not.
Just a public meeting.
But if someone calls me and asks me, I'd really like to know what to tell them.
They can come and listen.
Yeah.
And then they can offer suggestions when it comes before the whole board.
Yep.
Is that,
That,
can you do it that way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure you can.
Then let's go with that. Okay, that is it. So we're good with that. Bylaws, land management, update on Coolis Farm. So, we have two agricultural license agreements. One for the, Hunt Road parcel for the Pumpkin Man, Mike Raisbeck, Mike Raisbeck.
Good night, Mr. Schneringer.
And David, these are license agreements for the year 2025 going forward.
Yes, and I was going to check on whether it statutorily has to be restricted to just a year or it can be more than that. So I just haven't had a chance to do that yet.
I'd like to make a comment. I think it'd be better for a longer time span, 3 to 4 years at minimum, because of what it takes for a farmer to build a field up, okay? And then somebody sees the field being, they come in and say, oh, that field's growing good, I'll bid against you. You know?
Well, but see, that's the thing, if it's a license, it doesn't have to go out to bid. If it's a lease, it does. What I'm not sure is whether a license can't be for any more than a year. That's what I have to check on. If it can be, then the wording can be changed to 3 years or 4 years or whatever.
4 years, at least, minimum.
Okay, just have to
Minimum.
double check that
5
that's.
would be better. Caroline's young, Mike's a little older. He's gonna get sick of feeding the deer.
He might need months.
He's gonna get
I
sick of feeding
I
the
didn't say
deer.
that.
But I think the commission can go ahead and take a vote to authorize Carl to sign, just pending the final wording.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
could we put words to the effect of it being renewable? Or does,
Let's
The
go
farmer
with
needs
what
that
we've
assurance.
got now. I'll sign it. And if David comes back and says it can be changed, we'll just void the old one and start with it and go with a new one. At least they have, for this year, they'll have something signed and ready.
Yes, yes.
And we can modify it and change it and void out the existing one if we have a new one in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or something like that. That make sense?
Right, it gets it going, but our intention
It
is
gets it
to
going.
Yeah.
have
Yeah, but
longer
Yeah,
leases.
yeah.
We want to go longer as long as it's legally
Right.
permitted.
Yeah.
Okay, so you think that would be good, we can ask her, good for Carolyn, though? To John's point, the farming,
Yeah, because
Time-
if you had done it last year, if you had said, no, she can't do it this year, she's got money into it.
Yeah.
exactly, we
In
don't, yeah.
fertilizer and a seed or whatever she's put already down.
Exactly.
So it's,
We just need to know the details from
Okay.
town
All right, so-
council?
I'll speak to Paul.
Paul,
If he
okay.
says we need to
Oh, no,
consult
yeah.
He'll
council.
say
Well,
okay.
no, yeah.
All right. All right,
What's
so
that?
I'll make,
Say okay.
I move that we
Hopefully.
vote to authorize our chairman to sign the 2 agricultural license agreements.
motion from Chris,
Second.
second from Bill, all in favor?
Aye.
All in favor, all voted supporting, and I will sign that. And next thing on our list, was there anything else on Coolest, David? I don't think there was. Oh, we went out there and looked at that tree that was down this.
that's all cleaned up.
Did they clean it all up?
It's
Okay.
all in a pile to burn, all that stuff they've been pulling up, plus there's some, whatever was left of that tree is piled up on that
On the right-
concrete pad.
On the right thing?
It's on the concrete pad. Yeah, the tree on the right,
Yeah.
half of it fell down.
Yeah, okay.
That's all been cleaned up.
So is the tree that we looked at, has that been taken down?
I don't think so.
Which one do you look at?
Straight
out?
ahead, the one that was
They-
hanging over.
They
the-
cut
Oh,
off.
they did,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's been cut. Not the whole tree, though, but it was
No,
like a.
just the part that was
Right.
not safe.
Yeah, that's cut off.
And could I make a comment? Let's not talk about this tonight, but when you go to the MACC training and you talk to ecologist, you're kind of supposed to leave the wood on the site for a whole bunch of reasons. Not take it off-site.
That's
and-
our standard
and
practice.
not burn it. Now, that's a bigger topic than tonight.
The stuff they mostly burn is all the invasives. That's what that big pile is.
Yeah.
I know, but there's other
There's a,
stuff that the critters use and, you know, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk about that later.
Next thing on our list is the Norway tree removal and replacement planning. So we met out there, was that last Friday? Seems like 100 years ago.
I know, I forget what day it was.
It was 2 Fridays ago? I don't know.
Monday.
When-
Tuesday.
I don't know. But we had a good representation from a handful of residents. There were,
DPW.
the DPW was there, the Land Trust, Dave Sperry from the Land Trust was there, Peter and Bill and I were there. So there are something like 14 Norway maples that are on that property just to the left, as you look at towards the water from the parking area. And so the DPW will be out there to take them down. I think I heard a week from today, in the morning. They will take those down, and they have a number of trees that they have targeted to acquire and can use some of them to replace the Norway maples, along with probably get some more shrubs and some other things in that area. So just to let you guys know, that's what's happening there. And someday there may be a disability trail, accessibility trail that would go down to the water. The Land Trust is looking at possibly having a dock, like a sitting dock and a canoe launch out there. But this group is really motivated and doing a really nice job of planning out a lot of work there, and they're excited about it. They are looking to do around the native planting, the
Fence.
pollinator planting, to put some fencing, and got a quick quote from them for $800. They're looking to see if we can support that. I think in principle we can support that, but I'm a little concerned, David and I were talking about it, and that the height of it for deer,
Has to be more than 4 feet.
more
I
than-
mean, I don't know, we worried about 5 feet for our little turtle friends.
Don't
but-
get me going.
They had a plan.
Keep going.
Carl, we asked that question, you might have been off looking at the
No,
doc.
I saw that.
The
yeah.
answer was, we're picking deer-resistant native plants, was
Okay,
their
oh, okay,
approach.
They like everything.
okay, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so,
Trust me.
so are we okay with supporting up to $1,000 spend on materials for this? We want to vote to approve that, and then they can start buying fencing and,
Well, I
Well,
just think
it's
as long
not
as,
chain
as long
link
as the
count.
money's well spent.
No, it's
You know.
yeah.
Posting
It
rail.
has to be a high enough
So,
fence.
It
is
is,
it, if
you know,
if
the,
it's not,
they're talking about.
You put in concrete.
That won't do it. That won't
Reinforcing
do it.
I know, they're convinced it will.
wire,
There's some
6-inch
bastard
square,
gardeners
you know,
out
it's
there.
the sheets,
Whatever that means.
them using that.
Let's
and then
have
they got a piece.
How
one.
about deer, I mean, whatever that
Huh?
means for deer.
Peter, let's have one. You go
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm
No,
sorry.
you go ahead. You go ahead.
The fencing they were looking to do was, they were using it was a couple different types of fences put together. Part of it was the wire fencing that you put in a concrete slab. That was part of it, and then they were adding another type of fence intertwined with that, which reduced the 6x6 square hole down to a smaller area at the bottom, and then it was bigger at the top. It was kind of a combination of fencing put together.
Was wire matting, like for
Like a
concrete?
mesh?
Yeah, wire mat for the concrete.
Oh, that
and
was gonna be
then-
the fence?
But there was, that was part of the fence, but there was other fence that was incorporated in that.
It's kind
So
of clever.
it was a combination of
It's like an
fencing.
accident
One of the
when
guys there,
Yeah.
one of the guys that's part of the group
question
designed
is
it.
the height. So,
Right.
so let's just say, if we're okay with spending money, but
That's
let's
way
talk
down.
about exactly, if the 8 feet is, or 6 feet. or
That's what we found in Boxborough. It needs to be 8 feet, really.
Yeah,
feet
deer
of-
fencing is usually 8
Yeah.
feet.
But the flip side,
If it's not deer, if it's deer-resistant plants,
It's gonna be a woodchuck.
the,
It's gonna be something.
the flip side is my yard is full of deer-resistant perennials. My yard is full of deer and woodchucks, and they don't seem to eat my deer-resistant native perennials. That's all I know. I don't know a lot about it. And they said they had done homework and felt comfortable, but you've got different experience apparently.
I don't know,
yeah?
that fence sounds a little hokey to me.
How about a sign that says no deer?
What's that?
are you going to join the group?
What do you mean, join the group?
Well, if you're going to consult.
I'm not into hokey.
How about
6x6
So
concrete mesh is meant for concrete.
I'm just
Yeah,
trying
but
to
there's other
let
stuff
this
as well.
I
group
know.
do their thing, and, if they learn about something, if they make a mistake, they'll figure it out and
As
they'll
long as
fix
nobody
it.
gets hurt, Carl.
Well, that too.
That's important too.
That's
So a kid climbs up a fence because it's there. He gets hurt on it,
yeah.
falls and hits his head.
Is this something we do fund, these projects?
We can, sure. I
Have we?
mean, this is, I don't know, you tell me.
Do you want to have them come in and show us the fence, and maybe they can look into it?
We
And
could do that. We could do that. Why don't we do that? Why don't we have them come in, and make a presentation of what the fence
Yeah.
would be like, and we can have some more discussion.
If-
And we can all go off and do some homework on
Right.
8-foot fences.
If I could,
Deer fences.
and if I could
Barbed
just,
wire.
if I could just add though, when you think about the funding, right, what strikes me is, I guess you did it, you organized this thing or whatever, but it was coming together of DPW, Concom, the local residents, to do something good for one of our pieces of conservation. I remember you and I and Bill, I think we were saying, wow, this could be a model if this takes root, this kind of collaboration, because the local neighborhood people are willing to maintain the thing. Remember, we have that issue, some stuff gets built and not maintained. So my thought was, it's a good project to support, either with money or just by talking about it here. And with the idea that maybe another neighborhood group might adopt, right, another area where we could bring the town resources, DPW on the trees and, and by the way, our Giancarlo Kalpis is involved, our native plant person in town. So there's like right, it was a good thing going on.
Yeah, the
maybe you could have them come in, because they were also wanted to cover the water tank with some kind
Oh,
of structure.
right. Yeah.
Maybe they come in and where that was gonna go. Maybe they come up with a little,
okay.
little plan showing what they're looking for.
Let's ask them.
Then we can
Ask them
appropriate,
to
if
do
we
that.
wanna donate
Okay.
to it, we can.
Okay. We'll
We'll have a better idea.
At the next meeting, April 8th meeting.
You know what's gonna happen?
Okay.
Deer.
A little deer's gonna come up there, get caught up in that fence, die, and somebody's gonna be mortified over it.
Well, it
Or-
can happen.
Oh, it
Or,
happens.
or we can start our deer
Same as
management,
a turtle climbing the fence.
or,
Hire the
Or-
bow hunters?
yeah, or John, we could start our deer management program and use this as the first location.
All right, let's finish up here. I'm going to say, we're going to table that for the next meeting. David, can we make a note to include this in the next meeting? I'll reply to Mr. Boughton and
So what is the title of the item, the agenda item?
Thanksgiving forest plans. Thanksgiving forest pollinator plan presentation and review.
Yeah, and they can include that little water tank and how they're gonna, the location.
I think you're on those emails with him.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Agents report. Anything else, Mr. Agent?
No, I do not.
Nothing else? And certificates of compliance, we have 141 Littleton Road and 30 Russell Road. So 141 Littleton Road is right next to the lime quarry, right?
It is. And I've been able to find absolutely no record whatsoever in the files about what the project was.
Was that the garage on the house?
I don't think there's a garage there. Well, I think it's.
Is it right before Lime Quarry on the right?
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
the house with the garage. They built a garage on that house.
Right. That's what that was?
Yeah. It was a two-car garage on the house.
Okay.
It was
Well,
a few years ago.
For whatever reason, it's another one of those situations where the file has just completely disappeared. So, But I went out and took a look at the property. Everything looks good. Same thing with the 30 Russell Road.
Okay.
Recommend approval.
So I'll take a motion for approval of.
May I ask a
Yeah.
question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I know it's getting late. David, did you see this building that's on the town GIS right next to the wetlands? When you went out there?
Yes, there's a shed way back there.
Where's that?
About,
That's on 141.
We built that, me and Mark.
Yeah.
it's
Oh, you
in,
did?
you built that shed?
Yeah.
It was a doghouse. It's a big
Doghouse.
doghouse. It's in the wetland.
That used to be where the police could keep their dogs.
The police dog was there.
Yeah,
Policeman lived in that house.
Bobby Yaga, right?
right.
Right,
Yeah.
Really?
yeah. It was probably 50 years ago.
Over 50 years ago, yeah.
Wow, you guys built it 50 years ago?
Only
Still
a couple
standing,
of
that's
us
a
know
funny-
who lived in
Nice
that
job.
house.
It's a 50-year-old shed that,
It was a dog, it's a big
We found the
doghouse.
criminals, Peter. that
You know,
built that.
I don't think the statute of limitations is run yet. So,
Well, I'll just say, I told Carl this, but speaking of dogs, since I had never been out to the Lime Quarry Reservation before, I decided to take this opportunity to go out and just walk around the reservation. And so there's a vernal pool there on the right. When you go in, I was looking at that, listening to the wood frogs. All of a sudden, right in back of me, woof 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 woof. You know, some big dog right in back of me was barking, and turned around, and you know the owner, he was off leash. The owner said, "Oh, don't worry, he's friendly." So I was tempted to say, you know, dogs have to be leashed, but I didn't say anything. So you know, I went for a little bit of a walk. Then when I was leaving, someone else came past me, and they had two dogs, weren't leashed. I said, then I did say, you know, dogs are supposed to be leashed. And she said, well, it doesn't say anything. You know, were you going to arrest me?
little did she know.
So,
I'll pull up my badge, conservation agent.
well, but it says that, you know, there's a sign that says on the kiosk, dogs are to be leashed. So went down there and looked at it with her. And sure enough, the sign wasn't there. It looks like it had fallen off or something. And someone else right at that time went walking by with two big dogs who weren't leashed. So I just kind of gave up at that point. But so that sign needs to be replaced. I think the perception is that dogs don't have to be leashed.
That's definitely the perception on our properties.
Could be.
and, yeah, and,
Carlisle, it's allowed.
and you heard what happened last
Yeah.
month in Carlisle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not good. Okay, so we need to do a little work on our kiosks and get the signs up. And
So I'll make a motion back on the certificates of
Yes,
compliance.
thank you.
That we issue our certificates of compliance for 129-0467, 141 Littleton Road, as well as 129-0921, which is 30 Russell Road.
motion from Chris, second from Mark, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain for aforementioned reasons.
Okay,
And no conflict of interest here.
okay.
Sorry.
And we don't have any meeting minutes to approve, and our next meeting is April 8th is that 2 weeks? It's 2 weeks.
Yes.
That'd be 2 weeks.
We're not at a 3-week cycle right now. Okay. Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I know there's 5 Tuesdays in this month, in April.
Yes, I
In
think
April,
April
oh,
there
so
is,
April
yeah.
it'll be a gap. Okay, gotcha.
Move to adjourn.
Motion from Chris, second from Bill, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you, we're adjourned. Thank you very much, Chelmsford Telemedia.